Hello and welcome to another week of Sambo iRacing, and welcome also to my ultimate guide for sim racing beginners and intermediates. Whether you're just getting behind the virtual wheel or you've been grinding laps and you feel ready to step up, this video is packed with 25 game-changing tips to take your racing to the next level. From nailing corner entries into fine-tuning your home setup, we've got you covered. So stick around, and by the end you'll feel faster, smoother and more confident on any track. Grab yourself a beer, get yourself comfy, and let's get started. Tip 1, the traction circle. And don't worry, the other 24 don't have any diagrams, but I believe it's really important for sim racers to have a basic understanding of this concept. So when we're in the car, we've got 4 tiny patches of rubber that attach us to the track. So those 4 tiny contact patches, as they're known, have to convey everything, all the inputs that our hands and feet are putting in through the engine, through the drivetrain, and onto the track. So our feet control the acceleration and the braking. Very simple. Our hands control the lateral movement, so turning left and turning right. Now let's take away the picture of the tire from this example, and we end up with the classic traction circle. So this picture's been reproduced in thousands of books, in many blog posts, forums, things like that. So you may have seen it before. But it shows that we can accelerate, we can brake, we can turn left, we can turn right. But to do it in the most efficient manner possible, i.e. the fastest way possible on a racetrack in a car, we can only ever use 100% of the grip available. So if we're driving down a straight and we want to just stop the car in the most efficient manner possible, we can use 100% of the grip on braking, and that will make us stop the car in the shortest possible distance. But if we get it wrong and we jump on the brakes far too hard, even in a straight line, what we'll find is we'll use up more than 100% of the grip available and we will have a lockup. This is all well and good if we're only driving in straight lines, but we're not drag racing here. We're on a racetrack and we want to be going as fast as possible round corners. So the most efficient way to do that is to use 100% of grip whilst going around a corner, and you spread that grip out between lateral movement, turning left or right, left in this example, and braking at the same time. If we get it wrong and we turn too much with the brakes on a set amount, then we go past the limit and the car will spin. And alternatively, almost as bad is if we don't use all of the grip up. If we only use 50% of the grip up, the car is going to be going an awful lot slower through that corner than it could be. And this brings me to tip 2, trail braking. Now, if you watched any of my track guides, you'll hear me talking about trailing off and trail braking all the time. And the reason why we do this is going back to the traction circle. What we want to do is when the car is in a straight line before the corner, we want to use all of the grip available to slow the car. Now we want to maintain 100% of grip being used. So as we slowly start to come off the brakes, we can actually start turning in towards the apex. Now, if we look at, the average novice or rookie driver, what they tend to do is get slowly onto the brakes, increase in pressure as they realize that they're not going to stop the car, and then they'll generally jump off the brakes, roll through the corner, through the apex, and then get back on the accelerator. That's the wrong way of doing things, or it's certainly not the fastest way of doing things. Ideally, a trail brake will look like a right angle triangle. So we get onto maximum braking nice and quickly, and then we'll roll off as we start turning the car. And then as we get to the apex, we'll completely come off the brake and we get back on the accelerator. So as you can see here in this graph, it's allowing us to keep a straight steering wheel whilst we're doing the majority of the braking. And then as we start rolling off and we have some grip available for turning the car, we can start turning it left as we were into the example. As we're virtually completely off the brake, that's when we can be fully on our lateral movement, and then we can straighten the car up at the apex and get back on the accelerator. Which brings me to tip 3. Smooth is fast. And whilst you've probably heard that said before, and whilst it is somewhat of a cliche, a lot of cliches are based in the truth. But why is smooth fast? Well, it allows you to optimize the tire grip, as I've already mentioned before. Every time we get on the brake, what happens is the balance of the car shifts forward, i.e. the weight of the car shifts forward. If we can brake and then smoothly come off and then smoothly get on the accelerator, it allows for consistent weight transfer. If we get on the brakes, off the brakes, on the brakes, the same with the accelerator on the way out of the corner, what we're doing each time we do that is we are upsetting the balance of the car. Smooth driving allows for efficient cornering by allowing you to utilize trail braking. It improves predictability. If you're doing the same sort of inputs and you're smoothly on and off every single time you go around a corner, it's going to be an awful lot more predictable for you than it would be if you're on and off. It allows for better fuel and tire conservation. Now, if you're just racing in rookies in 12-minute races, this isn't really a thing. But if you start doing endurance races that are 2 hours in length, then fuel and tire conservation is very, very important. And it allows you to enhance the precision, looking for the same braking points, turn-ins, throttle applications, all through smooth inputs. Tip 4, use braking markers at the side of the track. Now, even if you are using the driving line, if you are following a number of cars in a race, 3 or 4 cars in front of you that are all directly in front of you, nose to tail, you're not going to be able to see where the driving line goes from green to white to red as you come into a corner. If you have a turning point and a brake marker on the side of the road, at least that way you're still going to be able to see it if you're following in heavy traffic. Try and get used to it, try and learn it, it will improve you in the long run. Tip 5, use your left foot for the brake pedal. If you aren't already doing this, then today is the best day to start doing so. Wean yourself off that right foot brake. We are sim racing. We want a quicker response time. We don't want that delay of moving your right foot across. If you are driving a non-sequential gear shift car, i.e. a car that you have to put the clutch in, such as the Formula V or the FF1600 or the Mazda MX-5 or anything like that, then the best thing you can do is assign yourself a button on your steering wheel to act as the clutch. It will speed you up. If you're unsure how to do that, then let me know and I shall do an explainer video for it. Tip 6, drive the car you enjoy driving the most. If you love the MX-5 and you've tried GT4s and GT3s and you hate them, then stick in the MX-5. At the end of the day, this is a hobby. It's meant to be something that we enjoy doing. We improve the most when we practice, and we're far more likely to practice more if we are driving a car that we enjoy. Tip 7. When it comes to practicing by yourself, little and often beats long sessions time after time. The reason for that is if we are only on for half an hour at a time before we have a break or before we go and do something else, touch grass or whatever it is, we are more likely to be alert and actually taking in what it is that we're doing than if we're sat on our sim rig for 2 hours, just going round and round and round and getting very bored. There is a law of diminishing returns when it comes to learning. Make sure that you enjoy it. Make sure that you're alert when you're doing it. Tip 8, get your field of view sorted from the off. This is really important for a number of reasons, and it's not because I'm the field of view police. If you look at these 2 videos side by side, it's the exact same video, it's just with a different field of view in both. Now, the video on the right, the field of view is far too large, and it seems as if you're sat in the back seat of the car. Everything looks a lot faster than it actually is, whereas on the left-hand side, with a correct field of view, everything seems to be going slower and you feel like you've got a lot more time. It's an important thing to get right. There are videos on YouTube to do it. If you're unsure, again, let me know in the comments and I'll point you in the right direction. Tip 9, turn up the noise. When we are sim racing, we are missing a massive, massive sensory input that real race car drivers get. And that's through our backside giving us information about where we're moving on the track, whether or not the car is slipping, the angle that it's doing so. All we have to rely on are our ears, our eyes, and our hands through our steering wheel inputs. Now, obviously, we've talked about how we can improve that for our eyes with the field of view. What we can do with our ears is turn up the audio volume over our tires or turn the engine down a little bit. I know I've had some people comment and complain about the tire noise on my videos before, but that is the main way that we can understand how much stress we are putting our tires into. If your tires are screaming, it usually means you're using the maximum amount of grip available. And it will often give us forewarning of when we're losing grip well ahead of our steering wheel letting us know. Tip 10. Having a force feedback wheel is going to improve you. It's going to improve your consistency. That's not to say you need the latest $2,000 direct drive wheel to be competitive. To the fastest guys in the Formula V, use a G29. In fact, Seb Coulson won the V Championship using one himself, which kills me. But just goes to show, so long as you have some force feedback and you get used to the characteristics of that wheel, then anything is better than nothing. Tip 11, your first upgrade. Now, if you don't already own a pedal set that includes a load cell pedal, this would be my first recommendation for upgrading. Most starter sets, certainly the one that I had, include a hall sensor, otherwise known as a magnometer. What that does is it measures the distance of travel on the brake pedal, whereas a load cell pedal measures the amount of force that has been applied to it, which is the same as in a real car. You may ask, why is that better? Well, in terms of speed and consistency, your thigh's muscle memory is far more likely to remember how hard it pushed something than it is the amount of distance it pushed your toes out. So it will lead to improved consistency. You won't lock up as much. You will be able to trail brake a lot easier, and it would be my recommendation. Check it out. You can buy them from Fanatec or from Thrustmaster from $200 now. They're not as expensive as they used to be, and they really are a good bit of kit. Tip 12, reduce the variables. So I would recommend having one car that you use to try out any new track. And I would recommend having one track that you use to try out any new car. The fewer the variables you have, the better it is. So, for example, if I'm trying out a new car, I take it to Okayama because I know when I go around Okayama in a car that I know, I can repeat the same lap within a sort of tenth or two, 10 laps in a row. Vice versa, if I'm trying a new track out, I'll tend to use the Formula 4 because it's a car I know incredibly well and I can get round most tracks and hit the limits fairly quickly. So reduce the variables, have one car that you try out new tracks, one track that you try out new cars. Tip 13, start slow. Now, whether you're using iRacing as your sim of choice or ACC or Gran Turismo or anything like that, my recommendation is start in a slower car. When we are driving a car and when we are driving in sim racing for the first time, it's basically like we're trying to learn a new language, getting used to our feet doing different things, our hands doing different things, our ears listening out, and our eyes trying to gauge what's happening when we do different things. So, like when you do learn a new language, it's better off if the people you are listening to talk slow. If you go and speak to an Italian and you're just learning that and they rattle off a sentence like a machine gun firing off, you're going to have far less chance of understanding them than if they were to talk slowly to you. So, exactly the same in cars. When you are starting out, try and start in slow cars, even if it's not the car that you want to race forever and you want to race in a flashy Ferrari or in a Formula One car or anything like that. Start slow, learn slowly. It will improve you in the long run. Tip 14, the Delta Bar. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe the Delta Bar to be a great bit of kit. It really does help me see where I'm going wrong and see where I'm going right. But don't obsess over it, especially when you're learning a new track. And also, please be aware that sometimes you might gain on your Delta Bar into an apex only to lose out on the Delta Bar on the way out of it. So do try and think of it as going from the end of one straight to the end of another straight, as opposed to trying to beat your record time into an apex only to have a worse exit. Which takes me to tip 15. Always make sure you're aware of which is the most important corner on any circuit. The most important corner being that corner that is followed by the longest straight or high speed section. So that would be turn 16, Parabolica at Monza, Eau Rouge at Spa, or turn 5 at Laguna Seca. So we're going to be on the throttle for a long time after that corner. So what we want to do is maximize our exit speed, because every couple of kilometers an hour or miles per hour increase in exit speed might be worth a couple of tenths by the end of that. So always make sure you focus on nailing that corner in practice and make sure that you're then nailing it again in the race, because most people won't be. Tip 16, and we're nearly there. Work smart, not hard. So rather than having to come out of the pits and lap and lap and lap, and then if you crash, going back to the pits and starting out on cold tires all over again, make use of auto reset. That's the name for it on iRacing. Gran Turismo and ACC also have their own versions of it. If you aren't aware how to set it up, I'm showing you on the screen now. You go to options, you use two buttons on your steering wheel, one to set a mark point and one to hit a reset button. This is how I'm able to do my track guides. If you think that I go out and I nail every track guide in 5 minutes without ever crashing or spinning off or whatever when I'm trying to maximize it and hit the best possible time, you'd be very, very wrong. Make use of it. It's a game changer in terms of practice. If you just want to practice one corner over and over and over again, such as the most important corner on a track, then do make use of it. Tip 17, replays. Yeah, replays are such a good tool for learning how to sim race and how to drive fast. What you should be doing is not just looking at your cockpit view, but go to chase cam after you've done a good lap. See what you did differently to the lap before that. Make sure that on corner entry you are using the full amount of the track and the rumble strip, and sometimes even a couple of inches of grass to get your entry perfect. Use the chase cam to make sure and see if your wheels are just butting up right against the apex or the curb where they need to be, and exactly the same way on track out. Replays are a tool that you should be using. Tip 18. Practice is important, but it's only important if you are practicing the right things. If you are just going out there by yourself blind and doing 10 hours of practice on your sim rig a week and you are practicing the wrong thing, all you are doing is ingraining bad habits upon yourself. So make sure if you're practicing and you're using replays that you are noticing where you are going wrong. If you are unable to do that for yourself, then that brings me to tip 19. Compare everything. Now, the easiest way you can do that is to compare your qualifying lap with the person that qualified in P1 in your race. You can compare your race technique with what they did if you want to watch from their onboards during the race. You can have a look at YouTube races to see people that have higher iRating than you, what they're doing in the race that puts them in the position that they're in to win. But the most important thing that you can do is download a third-party piece of software called Garage 61. There you can compare your telemetry with other people in the same car on the same track. You can check out what conditions they were racing in. And also remember, don't compare your lap with someone 6 seconds faster than you if there are people going that much faster. Always look maybe 1 to 2 seconds ahead. Compare the telemetry, see if they're braking later, harder, softer, see if they're getting on the gas earlier, see if their lines are different to yours. But it's a really good thing to do. Tip number 20, race against people that are faster than you. Now, Mario Andretti once said, you learn a lot more from the races you lose than the races you win. Ayrton Senna said, losing a race is not the end, it's an education. And that's absolutely true in sim racing as well. Now, it could be that you're racing in a very popular series with 12 splits, and everybody in your race has got a very similar speed or iRating as yourself. And if that is the case, then tip number 21 is going to come in handy. Rather than just racing an official series, I would recommend joining a league. The reasons for that are you'll get to know your opponents. You'll be racing against the same people on a week by week basis. This will eventually lead you to having rivals, people who you think, I think I'm a little bit faster than them. It will allow you to race against people that are faster than you, as in the previous tip. You'll end up making friends. You don't always have to race by yourself. When I first started sim racing, I think for like the first year, I found it to be a relatively solitary pursuit, a pastime where I was just completely by myself. Then I got invited to a good Discord, and now I'm on there usually with, 10, 20 people that I've gotten to know well over the last couple of years. It really does help your enjoyment of sim racing if you are doing it in a more social setting, as well as improving your speed and your motivation. It will make your time on the rig more enjoyable. Tip number 22. Consistency will beat hot lapping time after time. If you're able to put yourself in a position where you are near the lead, where you're near the front runners, and you're able to put the same lap in time after time without doing stupid moves that impair your ability to finish, then you are going to get far better results than if you go for every gap that you see and end up wrecking out half the time. Consistency is key in terms of improving. Consistency is definitely key in terms of increasing your IR rating and getting into higher splits to race against these faster drivers. And following on from that, with possibly my most controversial tip, please ignore the following quote. It's from Ayrton Senna. You've probably heard of it, and here it is. By being a racing driver, it means that you're racing with other people. And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you are no longer a racing driver. Well, I've got news for the people watching this video. We are not racing drivers. We are sim racers with a limited amount of talent. And if we go for every gap that exists, it still won't make us a racing driver. It will just make us crash out of most races. We'll probably be unwelcome from any leagues that we're racing in, and we'll probably have a low I rating. Look, Go for gaps that exist, but make sure that it's a gap that's going to give you, an above 80% chance of coming out of it with your car intact and with your opponent's car intact. I'm hesitant to put this tip in because I know people will comment and say, well, this is rubbish. You're not a racing driver. Well, no. But it comes from, years of experience, sim racing. Make passes, but do it with your brain. Tip 24. When you're starting out, even if you're an intermediate driver, setups are pretty much irrelevant. The base setups are always going to be okay. And unless you're able to put the same lap in, lap after lap, within a tenth of each other for sort of 3 or 4 laps, you are not going to notice the difference between different setups. So don't pay for setups initially until you get up to the sort of top 3 or 4% in iRacing. You're not going to see a massive difference anyway. Just use the base setups, use the setups that iRacing already have for that track and car combination, and don't end up paying for stuff that you don't really need in the initial phase. And my final tip number 25, is just be loose, stay loose, enjoy what you're doing. If you're sat there with all your muscles tense and your teeth gritted, you're going to have jerky, exaggerated inputs on your steering wheel, your brake pedal, on your throttle inputs. Your grip is going to be too tight. You're not going to be able to feel correctly what the force feedback is wanting to tell you from your steering wheel. So just relax. Know that this is just a game. We're just letting off a bit of steam. It's great to win. But the thing is, we're here to enjoy ourselves. So they've been my 25 tips. Let me know any feedback that you have in the comments. And do know that if you've not seen my track guides, I do put out track guides on a weekly basis. In terms of all of the rookie series, just about every track and car has got a guide out there already. I'm always happy to help out people. I just want people to enjoy sim racing. So there you have it. I've been Sambo iRacing, and I'll see you guys in the week. Cheers.